Welcome to the second episode of the Earkick podcast. I'm Karen Steffen, co founder and CEO of Earkick, and today's guest is Andee Chua. He's based in Singapore and a prominent voice of the Pride movement. A former international model, he's now community and culture builder at HubSpot. He's been elected LinkedIn Top Voice 2022, co-founder of Kampung Collective, a diversity, inclusion, and belonging advocate, and a employee experience expert.
Sometimes I just feel really grateful that I got to where I am right now. And I think it's always like a constant, evolving journey for myself. When I look at all these quote unquote successes that I have in life, I think about the failures behind all these successes, honestly. Like I wasn't the best in class, I wasn't the smartest and brightest student, pretty much mischievous, I was pretty rebellious. And I was just not conforming to the norm. Yeah, the little Andy was constantly failing. I'm described as being this child that has no patience. I am very hot-tempered, and I, kick a big fuss about every single thing, right? I am not worth it. I am not enough, and everything that I do just doesn't seem to work out the way that people expect it to be. Or like I'm always kind of like the odd one out. Imperfect perfectionist just to make myself feel a lot better that hey, I don't have to be perfect, I can be imperfect, and that works as well. I think I often feel like I am imperfect and I'm not enough, not based on what standards I set for myself, but based on what standards other people are setting for me. Every time my people ask me what's your favorite movie, the first thing that pops up in mind is always X-Men. It is the story of the misfits, and I just realized this a few years ago, right? Oh yeah, that's why I'm drawn to the storyline. That's why I'm drawn to the movie, because it is a group of people that doesn't really feel like they belong to the society, and people that are kind of being pushed aside by the mainstream. And that's kind of how I felt growing up. Like I didn't feel that I belong to sort of, any sort of social norm or social construct. I guess learning about their stories helped me to reflect on the things that I'm lacking as well. Like, it's I think it's a two-way conversation at the same time. So my relationship with mental health, finding that self-acceptance and pulling through the tough times by myself has been a lonely journey, to be honest. Like, if we put it that way. In my time when I was growing up, there was no social media. So a lot of things that I experienced, stress, internalized thoughts, I think I pushed myself to forget, forgive, let go, and all of that, personality wise, I was able to kind of overcome that. So there were some moments where I had suicidal thoughts. I don't know, I ran away from my family. I got into a very toxic mentality that I am the victim, then the world owes me an answer. So right now, when I kind of mentor the young people around sort of mental health and how they can cope, I think definitely giving them the support. I think sometimes it's not giving them the solution, but just being there to listen. People need to know that they have a backbone supporting them, but also helping them realize what is the problem and how they can eventually take steps to solving those problems themselves. I think over the years, I've been on this mantra in my mind of learning to say no to things. There's a lot of different channels and different people coming to me wanting to do something. And now I think I've learned a way to put it all to the table, take a step back and see which one brings me happiness and brings me joy. Because I think naturally I grew up trying to please people and trying to make people happy. So, it is very tough for me to say no to someone, or, to say no to a request. It is a very tough process for me, to be honest. But I realized that if I don't feel happy first, people's happiness wouldn't mean anything to me. I've learned to put myself first and learn how to say no. The thing about pride, like, firstly, knowing myself and identifying, I identify as a gay man, I came to learn a lot about myself over the years, right? I mean, I came out 10 over years ago. The more I learn about the community, learning about the history, and kind of, doing a lot more research, helped me kind of open up my perspective. Not just about myself, but also about the community, about the topic, and about the different illnesses, mental disorders that comes along with being gay or being, in the LGBTQ community. For example, there's a lot of stigma when you mention the word mental health. So I think it's about exposing yourself to more materials, and also different materials from different sources. The more you know, the less stigma there will be. Yeah, like in my company HubSpot, we have an employee benefit. Every employee globally gets 8 credits a year to speak to a mental health practitioner, a counselor, and it was actually my first time speaking to a psychiatrist, right? And I just went into the session with no expectation, but as I kind of talked to, about how I'm feeling, a lot of like deep down worries and doubts about myself, going to that session, which is my first ever encounter with a psychiatrist, got me to think so much about, how over the years I have been just sweeping my emotions under the rug, thinking that, hey, it's fine, things will pass. But it's accumulative over the years. There are certain emotions that I haven't let go, and it's still there. Sometimes we just forget. We just forget about our own feelings. We just let things pass. But it doesn't mean that there's no problem to it. Like, the way that I track my mental health is as simple as sleep. Am I getting good sleep? I think I have been very conscious about my sleep cycle recently. And usually the case is if I'm not sleeping well, the reason is always because I am very stressed at work, caught up with something, and I keep thinking about it before I sleep. So I have kind of set a ritual and a practice, before I sleep, 1 or 2 hours before I sleep, I will not do any work. If there is a crunch time that I really have to do something about work, instead of using my phone, I will use a notebook or a journal, and I kind of write things down. The idea is to offload all the things that's on my mind onto my book so that I can touch on it again tomorrow when I wake up. And also, like, recently, in the past 1 year, I have committed to a sort of a fitness regime. So I've been, pretty much tracking the food intake that I'm doing, like very nitty gritty and down to kind of data, which is something that I'm pretty much obsessed with, all the different numbers. And that's why sleep has become a very big part of this entire process, because it's all about recovery. Your physical health is as important as your mental health, because it's kind of interconnected. If I didn't get to go to the gym for a week, I'll feel my mental health is affected. I would tell him that don't be afraid of how others see you, how others are judging you, because the world is just gonna become a more inclusive and safe space for you to live in. You are going to have a voice, your voice would matter, and you don't have to be afraid. I've always lived my life in a way where I don't necessarily love making long-term plans. But at the same time, you probably will see me, continue doing community building. You will see me advocating for diversity and inclusion more. I will continue doing things that I am passionate about. I think as I grow older, there's a lot more self-acceptance and self-confidence. I know it is okay to not follow a mold and to create something, totally uniquely me. Maybe starting up a few other communities, working with the youth as well, having more impact and value that I bring to people in the community.